Hey, Junaid here. Previously, I created a to-do app using Laravel, Livewire, and Bootstrap. Link is in the description. So, in this video, let's build a contacts app. This is the UI design for our app. It is a search bar to search for contacts by name, email, or phone number. Then, it has a toolbar with a button to add contact and a toggle switch to allow us to switch between grid and list view for the contacts. When grid view is active, contacts will be displayed as cards like this, and when list view is active, contacts will be displayed in a table like this. In both views, we have actions to allow us to edit and delete contacts. We will display this message when we don't have any contacts. It applies to both views. And finally, we have the dialog to add or edit a contact. So before we can start, let's take a look at the markup. This is the search bar, the button to add a contact, two radio boxes with Bootstrap's UI acting as our switch. Then this is the grid view for the contact. So each card or each contact is a card, and then we have a table to display our contacts when we are in the list view mode. Then this is the dialog and the fields that allow us to add a contact. We will attack this app by creating a parent component which will house all these child components, which we will extract one by one. Let's call the parent component ContactSApp. So let's open the component. And what do we need for our ContactSApp? So as we have a view switcher, we need some property to hold that for us. Let's call it view mode, and it defaults to grid. Let's start by moving the search bar to the ContactSApp. Then we'll move the toolbar. We can grab all at once, but let's do it one by one. And since this toggle view depends on the view mode property, let's activate based on its value. If the value for view mode is grid, we will make the grid radio active. Otherwise, we'll make the list one active. So we can do it by simply adding a condition here. So let's make sure this is the right one. No, this is for the list. And if it's list, let's make it active. So let's copy this and paste it over here and change this to grid. So if we refresh the page, the grid switch should be active. Okay. So nothing is showing here because we haven't added the component here. Let's add that. So you can see the grid view is active. Suppose we want to make the list one default. We can do it by replacing this with list. Got it? So let's revert it back. And what we'll do now, make this reactive or add an action to these buttons so that whenever we click the list view, it will change view mode to list. And if we click the grid view, it will change the view mode back to grid. So we can do it by adding an action to both of the inputs. So this will be a Livewire action that will trigger a PHP method which we'll create in the components app. Let's call wire click and we will call it toggle view and we will pass list. So whatever this method receive, it will set the view mode to that value. So let's copy and paste this to the second radio. And this will not work because we haven't created this method yet. Let's do it now. We'll call this mode and so let's see if it works. Looks like this is working. No, it's toggling back. So let's see what's wrong. Okay, this should be grid. Try it again. And it works. Okay, so now we will extract this card to its own component and let's call it ContactGridItem. And we will call the container or the parent ContactGrid. So let's do it now. Or make Livewire ContactGridItem. So let's grab the card and paste it here. So let's get rid of this outer div. And call this here. Okay, so if we take a look, nothing should change. So this is working. Let's create a component for the grid itself, the parent component. We will extract this part to its own component, and we will call it ContactGrid. Let's call this here, and this will not be called here because we are using the contacts component, so this will go into that. So before we can show that item, we will display the contact grid in the ContactsApp component. Let's open it up and call this here. So this grid will display only when the view mode is set to grid. Let's add a condition here. If string view mode is grid, only then display the contact grid. In the other case, we will display the contact as a list view. So okay, so let's see if it's working. So if okay, we made a small typo here. It is view mode with capital M. So if I switch to this view, so this is right now not a component, it is always appearing, but the contact grid is not displaying because we are in the list view mode. Okay, suppose if I this is always showing, so this has nothing to do with the switch at the moment. Suppose if I get rid of this, so for the list view nothing shows. For the grid view, the contact grid is appearing. So this one's working. Let's create the list view grid and grid item. So we'll start with the contact list. So let's paste in the list view code here. And call this component in the contact app. So let's copy this and paste it here and change this to list. So now if we refresh, this should be working. Okay. So let's now extract this list item into its own component, and let's call it ContactListItem. So we have the list item. Now let's extract the item from the contact list, which is this row. Contact list item, and paste it here, and let's call it here Let's see if it's working. So this is working. Now let's make the contact grid and the contact list a bit more dynamic, because eventually all the information coming to this views will be from the database. So before we can make them dynamic, I think we should create the table migration and the factory for a contact. Let's do that now. So this will create us a contact model along with a migration and a factory. So let's add the fields we need. Then let's create a factory. So we are creating a factory because we want to generate random contact, and the factory will help us. So let's run migration and create some contacts. Let's run Tinker and create some contacts. So these are the 10 contacts randomly generated for us. Let's go back to the contact grid and make the contact grid item dynamic so that it can take a contact. To make this contact grid item able to accept a contact by introducing a mount method and passing in the contact model. Pub mount contact. And this must be public. Let's go to the contact grid items view and change some fields. So instead of this hard-coded name and rest of the information, we will bring it from the database or from the model. So the model is contact, and this will be first name and last name. Instead of this, we will introduce our getter to the model. This is the contact model. So we will call it get full name attribute. So we will use it like this: contact full name, and it will give us the first name space the last name. Okay, let's go back to the component. Then we have the email. And then finally number. Let's go back to the parent component for this component and create a loop so that we can generate all the contacts from the database. So from where do we get the contacts? We can get them from our ContactGrids class. Now that we have all the contacts, let's loop through each and display each contact as a grid. And we will do the same for the table view or the list view. So when there are no contacts, we will display this message. And exit. And we will pass this component this contact. So let's see if it works. Yes, it does. So every information is coming dynamically from the database. Let's do the same for the list view. So we can copy and paste the same code. Instead of grid item, we will call it list item. Okay. We haven't made this dynamic yet. Let's try it and do that after that. So we haven't done anything to the component because that's why it's crashing. So let's do it now. We'll do the same as we did with the component ContactGrid. Let's change the contact list item to understand that we are passing this a contact variable. On the mount, and we'll pass a contact. And let's make this component list item dynamic as well. So whatever we did with the grid item, we'll do the same for this. So let's copy this and paste so that it saves us some typing. So this is email. and this is number. So let's refresh and see if it works, and it does. Okay, so the same information but in two different views. So let's make this a component and call it a day. Then in the next video we will allow our contacts to be edited via this dialog. Let's start by creating a new component and let's call it ContactForm. Let's bring everything from here to here. Let's call it here and see if it works. Yes, it does work. Let's make this accept our contact. Let's go to the form. And it can accept a contact model. So that's all for this video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you think it deserves one, and do let me know in the comments if this video was any helpful. Thanks.